If you turned on cable news yesterday, you probably see how much of a complete mess the Bill Barr hearings were before Congress. It was basically grandstanding by Republicans and Democrats. Lots of Russiagate, hand-wringing. Perfect example from Eric Swalwell. Let's take a listen.
Now, Mr. Barr, are you investigating Donald Trump for commuting the prison sentence of his longtime friend and political advisor, Roger Stone?
No.
Why not?
Why should I?
Well, let's talk about that. Mr. Stone was convicted by a jury on 7 counts of lying in the Russia investigation. He bragged that he lied to save Trump's butt. But why would he lie? Your prosecutors, Mr. Barr, told a jury that Stone lied because the truth looked bad for Donald Trump. And what truth is that? Well, Donald Trump denied in written answers to the Russia investigators that he talked to Roger Stone during the time Roger Stone was in contact with agents of a Russian influence operation. There's evidence that Trump and Stone indeed did talk during that time. You would agree that it's a federal crime to lie under oath, is that right?
Yes.
It's a crime for you, it's a crime for me, and it's certainly a crime for the President of the United States, is that right?
Yes.
That was basically that for 7 straight hours, which is hellish. And I thought Aaron Mate put it best, from a leftist perspective. He's like, I'm no Barr fan. I hope he's out of a job next year. But the current outcry is not about him. It's Dems' attempts to discredit a Durham probe due to the inconvenient fact that the Russia conspiracy probe that Durham is scrutinizing was not just baseless, but likely criminal.
Yeah.
I think Aaron's 100% right. And really what it was is they will never stop trying to make America care about that. And even from a political point of view, it's incredibly foolish because, as you have pointed out, Trump's handling of the protests and of coronavirus are what nuked him in the polls.
Yeah.
That's what Americans actually care about.
Right.
Guess how much protest coverage there was vis-a-vis Russia and Durham probe and Roger Stone in this particular thing. It just shows you how foolish they are whenever it comes to actual politics.
They failed on every level. And you know why they do it? It's because, Swalwell and several other
famous for this.
this was their thing. This is why anyone even knows their names, right? And so they can't let it go. And to me, I have a lot of feelings about this because I really dislike Attorney General Bill Barr. I think he is one of the most frightening figures in the Trump administration simply because of the fact we talk a lot about how dangerous people who actually have an ideology can be when you're faced with a bunch of people who really don't have any ideological drive. This is a very ideological individual. He's
competent, which is why I like him.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he's very ideological. He has a really radical view of executive power that is not actually tied to Donald Trump. It is his longstanding view of the unitary executive and basically thinks this is a simplification, let me be clear, but that the president can do anything. That's basically his view of the matter. And so he uses very skillfully the position in the office that he holds to try to make that vision of the unitary executive to be reality, which when you have someone like Donald Trump, who I find to be abhorrent and frightening in many of his tendencies, makes that even more frightening of a proposition. We see that playing out right now in the approach to protests, of course, in Portland, the threats to send federal agents to other cities across the country, the tactics that have been employed in terms of, not identifying themselves, unmarked cars, venturing way outside of the bounds of just, the ideas were just protecting the federal property. Well, they've ventured way outside of the bounds of that. So you have to understand, this is not some regular bumbling Trump administration fool. This is a very smart individual who is highly competent, who has an agenda, who has been very effective at pushing that agenda. And what do? They spend all these hours when they have him there answering questions to grandstand, to focus on the wrong issues, not to get at the things that I think people actually really care about right now. And also, these politicians are not really trained in skillfully dealing with and questioning someone like Bill Barr. They don't do it effectively. They would rather just give a speech, which is exactly what they did, and have them give one-word answers.
And that's what really bothered me about this whole thing, which is, look, I support many of the policies Bill Barr has put in forward, but in a real democracy, you're supposed to have questioning in a public sphere on television. And So if the Bill Barr, the Attorney General, is going to be there for 9 hours, as somebody who absolutely wants to see protests quelled, is totally fine with force, but has a lot of questions about how the way this has been handled, I want those questions to be asked.
Yeah.
I want the administration to answer them publicly. That did not happen. There was not one instance of actual effective questioning about many of what's happening in Portland or across the country. It was all people grandstanding. I think about as close as it got was Pramila Jayapal.
Yeah.
Whenever she questioned him.
I thought Pramila Jayapal was the person who was on the closest to the right track here. Let's take a listen to how she conducted herself.
The president told governors on a telephone call that the way to deal with the protesters of police brutality and systemic racism like in Lafayette Square is that, quote, you have to get much tougher. You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. These are terrorists. And he also talked about you on that call, sir. Here's what he said. He said, the Attorney General is here, Bill Barr, and we will activate Bill Barr and activate him strongly. Do you remember that call, Mr. Barr?
Yes, I do. But he wasn't talking about protesters. He was talking
Mr.
about
Barr,
rioters.
apparently the president believes that you can be activated to implement the president's agenda and dominate American people exercising First Amendment rights if they're protesting against him.
Now, this was a key moment. If you look at the polling, things were trending. People didn't like the president's coronavirus response, and then there is a jump and a separation in the polls after the Lafayette Square Park incident. This is an incident that the American people very much want a lot of answers on, and where there are true discrepancies between what Bill Barr says happened and what others who were involved on the scene say happened. We needed a lot more like that because, look, especially with someone as smart and competent as Bill Barr is, you're not going to get him to make a mistake. But the goal is to get someone on the record
and
as much as possible so that when raw facts, so that when other countervailing evidence comes out, you can say this conflicts directly with your testimony here. But there was precious little of those types of moments where you're actually getting something that may ultimately be useful and that the American people even care about.
By the way, Republicans do this all the time too. And it used to drive me nuts whenever they would have like remember the Hillary Benghazi hearing for like 13 hours? Like, what did you know at exactly 12:22 p.m.? It was like, no, the problem is Libya. What did you know about Libya? Why did we bomb Libya and take out Gaddafi for no possible reason? Why is it an ISIS hellhole now, which continues to have a civil war? How did that happen?
Yeah, and ultimately,
not one question.
They didn't get anything out of her.
No, they actually made them look like fools at the time, which they were, for pursuing that.
One of her better moments.
It probably pains me to say one of her better moments, and that's what drives me. I mean, it always comes down to this like grandstanding, playing these ridiculous videos, not letting them talk. You have to have an actual transparent democracy. It's not just us who are saying this. Like you were pointing out, Preet Bharara, like very establishment people, even I saw on Twitter, Justice Department reporters and others were like, this is nonsense. Like we have gotten zero new information out of this hearing. So congrats, Dems, I guess.
Preet Bharara, even if you are like in on
full-blown resistance.
All about the Russiagate stuff and Roger Stone and all of that, even Preet Bharara said that the hearings were very disappointing. So way to go, guys.
Congrats.
All right, more Rising for you after this.